My guest today worked as a lawyer, a cabinet minister, leader of Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition in the Newfoundland and Labrador legislature. And he was a judge in the Newfoundland and Labrador Supreme Court, latterly as a member of the Court of Appeal. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Justice Leo Barry to the program. Nice to see you, Leo.
Thanks, Karl.
I have to begin at the beginning. You were born in Red Island, Placentia Bay. Now, where exactly did you grow up, and what was it like during your childhood years? Give me the atmosphere of your childhood and tell me about your family and so forth.
Well, I heard someone commenting the other day about free-range children, and I think that'd be a good description of the children on Red Island when I was there that I experienced. I was actually born just between ourselves in the Placentia Cottage Hospital, but I always said Red Island because that's where my mother was living at the time, and it saved a lot of explanation. So I was going out there, whether I wanted to or not, every summer. My parents would pack us off to Red Island. At that time we were living in Brigus, and that was our permanent residence, but until I was 13 or 14, I spent all my summers on Red Island, and it was a wonderful place to be for 2 months.
So when did you decide that you wanted to become a lawyer, and what was it about the law that interested you so much?
Strangely enough, I had decided I wanted to be a lawyer around grade 6 or grade 7, but I was talked out of it by my teachers, who were all nuns and who figured that I'd have a better chance of the priesthood, I think. They didn't look too kindly upon lawyers, so but I guess I was finished 2 degrees in math physics, my first degree, and math English, another degree, before I finally looked at the law option again. Went up there to law school with no great expectations, but loved it from the first day. I've loved the law, and I still love it.
Now, you went to Memorial for your undergrad degrees. The campus was very small back then, small student body, small faculty, I guess. But
I think there were only 500 or 600 of us the first year.
But a brand new campus. A brand new campus. Did you really get engaged in campus life? Did you do a lot of extracurricular stuff and get involved in politics?
Probably too much, because I was only 15 when I started classes. I think I was admitted to Memorial when I was 14 still. So I was 15 years old, away from home by myself, and I spent a lot of time socializing, more than with proper mentoring than I should have, I suspect. So I was recognized every year. They had 4 or 5 individuals who participated in student affairs, were taken into called the John Lewis Peyton Honor Society. So that was one indication that I was involved in student affairs and student politics. Apart from that, I did get into partisan politics to a certain extent in terms of going away to at least one conference as a student delegate for a political party.
Yeah. I believe Les Toms and Bill Rowe were around at that time when you were at Memorial.
That's correct. They were classmates. I don't think we shared one course, myself and Bill Rowe. Les Toms was a bit ahead of me at MUN.
So you went then to Dalhousie to do law, and after that you attended Yale University, one of the most prestigious universities in the world, university that educated many United States presidents going back as far as William Taft, I think. And here you were, this young man from Brigus or Placentia, Newfoundland, landing in Yale. What was that like? How did you feel when you were there on the campus?
Well, I loved it. I was very lucky in my academic career. Starting in Brigus, I had a nun teaching me who got me interested in literature in a way that I think other teachers would not have done. The University Memorial, Mose Morgan, the president, initially vice president, Douglas Eaton, they were both quite helpful to me as a student. I think I missed out a little bit in terms of getting guidance as to how to proceed in certain aspects. You probably don't know this, but I was the leading man in Tennessee Williams' Summer and Smoke
Really?
in my third year, and I spent more time in theatrical guys than in academia.
Where was that?
This was at Memorial.
At Memorial,
yeah.
okay.
So it was. Now when I got to Dal, again I hit Horace Reed, who was the dean of the law school and a wonderful man, very helpful to students, including myself. Again, the vice president, ultimately the president of Dal, arranged to have this professor come up from Yale, and they awarded one scholarship, which I was lucky enough to get. The individual who arranged it for me at Yale ended up as the president of the American Society of International Law, so he was top caliber, and again very kind to me, and I thought the way they presented themselves helped me a lot.
So it was international law you were studying at Yale?
That was what my major paper involved. Interestingly, it was international law as it related to climate change, which was referred to as weather modification at that time.
Wow.
But that was back in 1967, 68. So I've had an interest in matters relating to climate change ever since.
So then you end up back in St. John's, or here in St. John's, and with some colleagues you start a law firm. And in '72, you threw your hat into the political ring.
Sooner than I wanted to.
Yeah,
I was really too young to be taking time out from the law practice and going into politics, but it was a case of opportunities arise and you either take them or lose them. And in this case, I went down to Bjorn Placentia West to run against the Liberal candidate at that time, who had trounced others in politics since 1949. He was one of Joey Smallwood's group, and nobody could lay a hand on him until in the space of 10 days we had for the campaign by the time the nomination process took place and so forth. So we were fortunate enough. When I went to bed that night, I was ahead by 10 votes.
Wow.
So
wow.
It was interesting.
So this was the '72 election was when Frank Morris was taking on Joey, right?
That was the second election.
Second go.
Yeah. The first election in '71, they had to do all over because of the burning of the ballots.
Yeah. So here you are. You're the member for Placentia West, and Frank Morris invites you into the cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
He offered you Mines and Energy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would imagine that I guess the oil and gas industry, oil and gas development was maybe a little bit beyond the embryonic stage at that point, but still very, very early. Did that file preoccupy you while you were the Minister of Mines and Energy?
It did, and on the energy side, we also had the crisis, the oil crisis. About a month after I was appointed, I'm thrown in the middle of this turmoil where the Middle East had basically taken over pricing, and the North American and Europeans were suffering as a result. So there was a lot of international matters. There were programs to insulate homes better so that they can conserve energy. And in Newfoundland, we were fortunate enough to have indications of oil and gas, but nothing proven until August of '79. I came out to a press conference with a little vial of Texas tea and had everybody sample it and feel it. And it was not only oil, it was high-grade oil. It was very clean, still is what's being produced off Newfoundland and Labrador. And I felt that while there are a lot of problems there, it's better to have the problems of plenty rather than the problems of poverty. We've lost a lot of time and a lot of good people by not being able to give them what they needed to progress. So I knew there would be problems with oil and gas, but I also knew there'd be tremendous benefit, and I think it's been proven out. Although right now, we're sort of caught between those who want to get us out of the oil and gas industry, and those who say that we can still have a good future there.
Leo, you managed to get through one term, and then in '75 you lost your seat. That was a contentious election as well, because I think Joey Smallwood had the Liberal Reform Party then. Ed Roberts was leading the Liberal Party.
Right.
And you lost your seat. How did you feel about that loss, and why do you think you lost?
Well, I still wonder, and I haven't had anybody really tell me the reason. There was a little bit of a smear campaign that proved successful, but by and large, I take responsibility for not to fail in looking after the district, because my district was well looked after, and I spent a lot of time down there. But the person who had beaten me the previous election came back and solidified the campaign. Our campaign, by the way, in '71 or '72 was marvelous, because we set up a system where I did 2 meetings a night in the various communities all around the district, and then I knocked on doors every day during the election for the as I say, 10-day campaign. So we had a real spark going. In '75, the same spark wasn't there. I guess I was considered to be old hat. I had spent a fair bit of time on matters that weren't, I guess the constituents couldn't see at that time were directly relevant. Encouraging the production of oil and gas was one of those. I remember going around the province between '72 and '75 and speaking about the potential, the R&D that could be done, the vessels that could be built and so forth. And you could see that it wasn't really selling. But the day after, in 1979, that you had an actual discovery and that you could show people, that's oil. That can be produced off Newfoundland and Labrador. All of a sudden, whoa, and the mindset changed. Everybody started to pay attention. Yeah, there is something in this oil and gas industry.
So after that loss in '75, you joined the faculty of Dalhousie Law, and you were lecturing for a few years.
I taught for 2 years at Dalhousie, enjoyed that, and I was trying to see whether, I knew I loved the law, I wanted to work in the law, but I wanted to see in 77 to 79 I taught, and I was able to satisfy myself that really I wasn't cut out for the academic, the solitary academic life. I wanted to have a bit more immediate self-gratification, and it turned out that being a judge was the balance that I wanted in a career, because on the one hand, you have a chance to do your own research and quietly think about legal issues, but while at the same time, you're able to see almost immediately that you're doing good work by having decisions that help people. So you're not sort of waiting for 10 or 15 or 20 years before you see things happen.
Yeah. But after that period where you were at Dell, you decided to get back into politics. Frank Morse had resigned, and you ran for the leadership, which Brian Peckford ultimately won. But why did you want to become leader of the PC party and premier?
Well, I saw there was an opportunity there to have a greater impact on doing good for the province. I had a desire to see matters improve and to work so that we could have less poverty, more opportunity, particularly for young people in terms of, I think if you look around now, it's wonderful to see the numbers of men and women around who are in the oil and gas industry, who are learning about a new industry, and not only the fact that they're getting employment, they're getting a very high level of training in this, and so that's about all I can say on that.
Yeah. Now, Premier Peckford put you in the cabinet again and made you Minister of Energy. That's when you came out with the vial of oil in '79, I guess. And but then you got into negotiating with the federal Liberal government over offshore matters, and you and Premier Peckford had a falling out, you disagreed on how these negotiations should be handled. Can you give us some background on that?
It would take a long time, I'm afraid, to get the full essence of our disagreement. It was basically over the course of a couple of years, I concluded that I was not in agreement with the way the Premier was proceeding with oil and gas negotiations, and I wasn't being listened to, I felt. Not that I wanted to be a one-man show. I recognize that the Premier calls the shots, and the Premier had shown me a lot of confidence, or shown he had a lot of confidence in me by putting me on the Planning and Priorities Committee of Cabinet, as an example. So I had lots of room to spread my wings there. But things happen, and at some point, confidence is lost or trust is lost, and that was what happened in our case.
You must have felt, quite strongly about it, because you did quit the cabinet.
I did, yeah. I remained in the party for another couple of years, but I resigned from cabinet.
Well, you ran there was an election in '82, you ran again. And then in '84, you left the party altogether and crossed the floor.
That's correct.
Why did you do that?
I felt that basically the Premier Peckford had fallen into the same trap that Premier Smallwood had, and that it had become too much a one-person show, and we needed better opposition. If not, if you can't win in cabinet in terms of having an impact, and you're dissatisfied with the inability to do that, then I felt that I had to make a change, and I felt that the province needed a good opposition, and there were only seven. But I guess by the time of the election, there were only about 4 people there in the Liberal Party, and there wasn't a good opposition. And I felt that if I couldn't win in the election, which being there only 5 months from the election was called, being as leader, didn't really have time to get completely.
Well, in the '85 election, you did pretty well though, because you went from, I think, 4. Just prior to the election, up to 15.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, I don't think this was ever looked at, but if you analyze the districts, there were 631 votes that could have been sprinkled in the right districts, and that would have made the difference. Now, that's a fanciful concept, but to show you everybody's vote counts. Well, when you're into an area where 631 can make a change of government, I thought we'd done quite well.
Yeah. And I mean, in terms of numbers, 15 in opposition is a lot better than 4. But also, I want to ask you, what does it take to be a timely and effective opposition?
Well, one of the most important things in my view would be to lose the infighting, concentrate on the issues that are of concern to the people of the province, and get away from the backbiting and inability to work with your fellow party members in the legislature. And I see again the same thing is happening to some extent in that there's been an awful lot of focus by the politicians on the process and not enough on dealing with the problems that will make people's lives better.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that certainly seems to have been the case with the last Liberal administration here.
Yeah, again, I'll reserve my powder on that one.
A lot of that got out into the public realm. Probably they would have preferred not have gotten out into the public realm. In 1987, you were blindsided by your caucus when they presented you with, I don't know whether it was an ultimatum, but they said, we want a leadership convention. This kind of came out of nowhere, and I can't imagine what pressure you must have been feeling at that time, knowing that this could lead to you having to give up the leadership of the party and so on. What was going through your mind when all of that happened?
There was a lot of frustration, and I have to say a bit of anger as well because
natural.
What I really objected to was not that there should be a test on my leadership or a questioning my leadership, but I really objected to the going behind my back, and not one of the caucus had the nerve to come and speak to me face to face. It was all done behind my back, and I should have. The only mistake I made was not calling for a leadership convention right away. But that's where I think my personal anger. It was a little bit of no. It's not going to be that easy now, boys and girls. It's going to take more than that. So I hung on for 5 or 6 months longer than I should have, in retrospect.
And then you left politics altogether, said bye-bye. Did you have many regrets when you left?
Yes. One of the things I most regretted was I felt that I had let down some of my supporters, who had spent a lot of time and effort in helping me become leader and in dealing with elections. And that bothered me, but I had come to the conclusion that I still wanted to make a contribution to the province. I felt that I could do that through the court system.
Well, you certainly did. You certainly did. Quite a lengthy, distinguished career in the Supreme Court, beginning with the trial division and then ending up in the Court of Appeal. There are lawyers who I suppose want nothing to do with becoming a judge. It's not something that all lawyers aspire to be. What do you think are the qualities that a judge should possess?
Well, one of my granddaughters suggested that you had to be able to organize well your sock drawer. She noted that I was a little obsessive-compulsive about the way I looked after my clothes, my sock drawer. So she felt that that was one area where to be a good judge, you have to have control. I think willingness to listen and to keep an open mind until you've heard both sides on an issue was probably the most important part of being a judge.
I suppose it helps to be a good writer, too. You have to write those decisions.
Yeah, and that's another area where I could have done better in terms of writing a more flowery decision, but I was more concerned, and I think the decisions were okay, but my main concern was to have them readable so that the person who lost in any particular decision could look at it and understand why he or she was losing and what the reasons were. So I wanted to get away from these obscure Latin phrases and just say I rely on stare decisis or whatever. I wanted to get away from that approach and look at really what are the issues as they affected people and how can we make conditions better for the general population by changing or modifying a particular approach in a particular case on a particular issue. There was a lot of opportunity to make a change, I think, and a lot of opportunity for the judge to learn. And I think particularly with the case where the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia were alleging that they were here before the Europeans and therefore should have a claim to the island of Newfoundland. That issue is not settled yet, I know. But and if anyone looked at that decision, they could see the amount of research into the history of what had occurred and how conditions were back in the 1700s, for example. We see how the law is a good combination of principle, but also practical assessment of what will make things better.
And on that note, I'm afraid we've run out of time. It was a real pleasure having you here today, Leo.
I want to thank you for the invitation, Karl.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's it for this edition of Karl Wells Point to Point. Please join us again next time.